The next couple of pages that we're going to talk about is just a little bit more of what happens when our amygdala is in control of our life versus our prefrontal cortex. So these are some pages that you're going to want to do on your own time. What happens if your amygdala, your emotions, are in charge of making decisions for you? And so you're going to spend some time writing down examples of when this happened. And you just, again, you've got to be honest with yourself. And nobody's going to grade you for honesty, but your life is going to always kind of tell on you and say, look, you know, this is what's happening. And again, if you have other people that are healthy and they're objective and they're able to say, well, actually, this is when I notice it happens, then you can actually just put kind of like a mental note for yourself that this is what I want to do in order to prevent this from happening in the future. And then you're also going to do the same thing for when your prefrontal cortex makes decisions. Obviously, it's much better if your prefrontal cortex makes the decisions and your amygdala gets to reap the benefits of that decision that was really good, because then you're like, wow, I don't have regret, I don't feel guilty, I don't feel shame, and you know what, I feel pretty darn good about myself. And so that's why you want the prefrontal cortex making those decisions, because it will protect your emotions, and then your emotions get to celebrate the great decision and the great, you know, part of the brain that was doing its job. So we need to let it do its job. Okay, now, how do I put the best part of my brain to work to help me make the best decisions? And so here are some really good examples or tips that you can use. Okay, so if you're driving, add the numbers on the license plate in front of you. And so you're going to actually force the brain to move into the prefrontal cortex. So you're actually working with the part of the brain that does computation and logic. And so let's say you're driving down the road and somebody pulls out in front of you and you're really mad and you've had a bad day anyway. Well, then immediately shift your gears, and it's going to take some practice because you're going to resist it. Your amygdala is not going to be easily trumped. In other words, it's going to say, look, I've been in charge your whole life and I don't want to give up my job. Don't let me, you know, don't try to take me and demote me. No, that's not what we're doing. We're putting it in its rightful place so that you can be healthy, and your amygdala will thank you later. And so you have to force your prefrontal cortex to get moving and say, okay, I'm driving, I'm upset, I'm angry. You know, you look at the numbers on the license plate in front of you and start adding them up. Then get with another one, add it up. If you're not driving, play chess, play a game of logic. Start doing things that require you to think it through and have a strategy. So if there's a game you like to play that requires strategy, where you're not just mentally just like doing stuff and you're in your mind, you're still thinking about the problem, but you're actually focusing your attention on something that requires a strategy. Do a math exercise. You can do them in your head, or you can do them a game on your phone where you play against your phone. Using a deck of playing cards, lay down each card and start adding all the numbers. So 1 plus 7 plus 8 plus 14 plus 10 of diamonds. And you go through the whole deck, and if you make a mistake, you start over again. And so what you are going to notice as you're doing this is something pretty exciting. You're going to notice you start calming down. And so if you're not calming down, you're not fully focused, because one part of the brain cannot work at the same time. So if you're engaging your prefrontal cortex, your amygdala has to step aside. And so that's when you know you're actually doing it properly, is because you're actually calming down. Okay, so you might want to count backwards from 100 or name your family names and associate numbers with those. And here's something else that's interesting about delayed gratification, which is really cool. You can actually build that up by using the opposite hand. And so if you're right hand dominant, only use your left hand. Never use your right hand. Brushing your teeth, everything. So if you start using an opposite, it's very interesting with the science of self-control, which is, again, another name for delayed gratification. If you work in the opposite trait of your dominant hand, then what will happen is your brain is forming new connections, and it helps you to develop self-control or delayed gratification. I think that's extremely exciting news. And so, all right, so let's Now let's look at the next slide. Okay, so back to the emotional intelligence thing. All right. The following are a few tips on your road. So these are some things you have to remember. The serenity prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. You can't change other people. And so this is something you need to remember. So let's look at this. Here are some things you cannot change. Natural law, man's law, and personal law. You cannot change other people. It's a myth. And if you think you can, the only thing you're doing is exercising a lot of control, and they might pretend that they're changing, but they're not. As soon as you're not in the room, they're going to be doing their own thing. And so you cannot control and change other people. Core purpose is about changing you, not other people. On the other hand, there are some things that you can change, even if you think you can't. Your purpose, because you can discover it and fulfill it. Your health, you can invest in your health to start becoming a healthier person. And your EQ, you can actually take direct responsibility for it, and you can become a better person and the person that you have always been intended to be. So I'm excited. Review these pages and see what you can really grasp and pull inside and apply to your life. And recognize that your future depends on how much you invest in yourself, okay? And so what we're going to do is I will see you in the next session, and let's see how it goes. I think it's going really good.